This book is a collection of stories, true stories about people whose lives have been devastated by grief and how they had the fortitude and the faith and the will to overcome it. I remember Tim came to see me, and Tim was a surfer, and I saw that there was a whole slew of arrests that all started after let's say April of the previous year. And during my client conference with him, because I was acting as his attorney, he wasn't there for a mediumship reading, I started realizing that his mother's spirit was standing behind him, and I started looking at her and kind of focusing on his mother's spirit. And so Tim's looking at me, and he's looking over his right shoulder, and he goes, "What are you looking at?" And then he goes, "You see things other people don't you?" And then I realized not only could Tim perceive spirits, but it made him so emotionally sensitive that on the death of his mother, instead of using his mediumship to help himself or getting into counseling, what he did was started doing drugs and drinking, and that led to a whole slew of arrests. Never Letting Go is the book for you if you like a good story. And this is a page turner. This is one that you're going to be up late because you can't put it down. And there's a lot of humor in it too. There's one story about my parents. They're having breakfast at a diner, and all of a sudden my mother gets that tingling sensation that you get when you detect the presence of a spirit. And she looks up, and there's a woman standing next to her that has no face. And also my dad goes, "Jeannie, there's a ghost at the table with no face." She goes, "You can see it." He goes, "Why did you bring it here?" She goes, "What's that supposed to mean?" He goes, "Well, you and that hocus pocus stuff here." She goes, "How dare you?" And they're getting ready to have this huge argument about why the spirit is there when the server walks through the spirit, shivers, and says, "Here's your breakfast. Y'all want anything else?" My parents look at each other and go, "No." And then the spirit receded from view. There was this one woman sitting on a jury, and we were questioning the jurors to make sure they'd be fair and impartial. And I knew that her sister's spirit was by her, and that her sister had been strangled because of the sensation I was getting. And so I asked this woman, "Have you or has anyone in your family been the victim of a crime?" And she said, "Yes, a year ago my sister was in a foreign country when an escaped mental patient strangled her and then dismembered her body and threw it in a garbage can like she was garbage." And then everyone in the courtroom was looking at me like, "Do something." And it was one of the most intense situations of my legal career. In Never Letting Go, I write about what it's like to be both an attorney and a medium. One day I came back from court and my secretary was hysterical. I said, "What happened?" She said, "My husband just witnessed a murder." So we jumped in my car and we headed to the scene of the murder. And what had happened was he worked for a moving company and his crew was loading up furniture in a moving van. At the house next door, he thought these two guys were playing paintball, and he realized one of them shot the other in the head several times. So when we arrived, there were police all over the place. And I figured, well, I had to be lawyerly because I didn't want his name being in the newspaper in the event that it was a contract murder. Suddenly, I started to shake, and I felt searing waves of pain, and I could see this young man's spirit running and running and running, and he didn't realize he was dead yet. And my secretary said to me, she goes, "You're doing that thing you do, aren't you?" And I go, "Yeah." So she led everyone away from me, the police and her husband, and I went under a tree, and the spirit came to me, and he knew I could see him, and I said, "You need to let go of this world. You need to cross into the light." And he looked at me like this, and he faded from view. And I broke into a sweat. So then I walked over to the police, and I said, "Well, was the murder victim about, 5'8", Hispanic male, wearing camouflage clothing, clean shaven?" And the detective looks at me and says, "The body's been secured. How do you know what the victim looked like?" And all of a sudden, I realized I am now a suspect in the murder. What was amazing was a month later, I was out to lunch and I saw a newspaper and there was a picture of 3 men in the paper. And I recognized one of them, and it was a story about the murder, and it was the young man that I saw. Information doesn't change people's lives, stories do. And these are real stories taken from my practice as a criminal defense lawyer combined with my abilities as a psychic medium. And together, this provides a very, very compelling collage of extremely healing stories that will help anyone get through the death of a loved one.